Jerika Duncan there at JFK International. We do appreciate it, Jerika. Now we want to bring in Michael Morell, former acting director and deputy director of the CIA. He is now CBS News' senior national security contributor. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good
Mike.
to be back.
So your take in terms of national security and the implications on the president's travel ban is what?
I think the travel ban is going to make us less safe.
You do?
Two fundamental reasons. One is it doesn't get at what the fundamental threat is. The fundamental threat at the moment is homegrown. So of the over 100 people that the Justice Department has indicted the last 3 years for ISIS-related crimes, 85% have been American citizens, right? So this doesn't get at the fundamental problem. And then two, it is going to be a recruiting boon for ISIS. It plays into the ISIS narrative that the United States of America is at war with their religion. ISIS hasn't said anything yet, but people close to them, people who amplify their message, are talking about it. They've been talking about it for the last 24 hours.
The idea of, again, feeding the worst of the jihadi narratives, that
yes,
America is our enemy, and this is more evidence of it. What do you make, then, of the 7 countries that were selected? We heard from every surrogate in the last 72 hours defending this, that, hey, these were 7 countries that were first named by the Obama administration and ratified, really, by Congress. What do you make of these choices?
One of the early concerns about ISIS guys getting to the United States was the visa waiver program in Europe, right? And how could people who had been to Iraq and Syria or been to other places who were Europeans could get into the United States? So what they did is they tightened up those procedures. They said if you're a dual Iraqi French citizen, you can't use the visa waiver program anymore. You have to get a visa. If you're a French citizen who happened to travel to Iraq or Syria, you can't use the visa waiver program anymore. So those were the countries they focused on in order to tighten up the visa waiver program. That's where that list came from. And it was working, right? There was already enhanced vetting of people from those countries for the purpose of the visa waiver program. And there's no evidence whatsoever that those tighter vetting procedures weren't tight enough.
Well, and, you know, to the best of your knowledge, because much has been made of this idea of extreme vetting, and really, I think for most people, we're talking about adjectives at this point. When you look at the vetting process specifically for refugees, it is about as comprehensive, it would seem, as it could be. What needed to change, in your opinion?
Look, everything can be made a little bit better, right? Absolutely. But of those over 100 people who had been indicted, right, that I mentioned, only 3 were refugees. 2 were from Bosnia, so refugees from years and years ago. 1 was from Iraq, an individual who had come to the United States as a refugee and then went to fight with ISIS in Syria and then tried to come back, right? That's it. That's the totality of the refugee threat that we faced the last 3 years.
It was very apparent in the reactions that there had been very little, if any, interagency discussion as to this executive order. This happens as news also came that the senior advisor to the president, Steve Bannon, is now a permanent member of the principals group of the National Security Council, head of the DNI, out, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, out. What does this say about the reorganization of power fundamentally?
I think there's 2 issues here. One is, what is the proper way to make decisions in a government? What's the proper way to make national security decisions? President Obama was criticized for moving too slowly. Okay, maybe he did on certain issues, but one of the reasons it moved slowly because he got his entire team together. He used the expertise that was resident in the department and agencies of the federal government. Everybody got a voice. Everybody got to look at paper. Everybody got to give feedback. There was room for discussion, right? That's the way the decision-making process is supposed to work. That didn't happen in this case. Sounds to me like the Secretary of Homeland Security was surprised by this order, right? That's not the way you make decisions. Then the second issue is Bannon on the National Security Council. Unprecedented. Okay, a political person is not welcome in that room. Politics should not be in the National Security Council. National security is too important to mix politics in there.
If we then look at the 7 countries currently listed here, another way to look at them are these are 7 countries that constitute the front line of the war against terror. Counterintuitively, aren't we forsaking the places that might need our interaction the most?
So there's three damages that are being done here. One is it plays to the ISIS narrative that we talked about. The other is we're angering the very countries that we need to work with us on counterterrorism. And then the third is it's taking away an incentive or increasing the disincentive for people in those countries to work closely with the U.S. military and with U.S. intelligence.
Again, when we need the most. Mike Morell, your insight always appreciated, especially as a newly returned colleague.
Great to be back. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.